Hello.
Just stop.
Oh my god, I'm crying laughing. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kingdom Collective, episode 3. And my very first guest is here, Lance Nofziger, my father, whom I've known for almost 25 years. Technically, almost 26, like from when I was conceived. So, guys, my eyes are watering, so I was just cracking up. Okay, so we have some really exciting things to talk about today. This is where I'm definitely going to get canceled because he'll just say whatever. So here's where I want to start. God's law in disciplining your children. Now, every time I try to say something about children, people come at me because, oh, you don't have children. Well, how come I can talk about everything else, but don't mention anything about having a child if you don't have one, because the masses are going to come for you. So that's why I was like, oh, perfect. I agree with him. He's a father, so he can say it for me. Purr. Okay, but first we're going to start with talking about God's law, because people are getting it confused, y'all. Do we pay attention to the Old Testament at all? Some people are like, oh no, that's the Old Covenant, so we just don't pay attention to anything. Let me just show y'all this. Okay, here's the New Testament. Here's the Old Testament. You think we just forget about all of this? No, why would God do that? So, the first question, why would God give a law to humanity that we wouldn't be capable of upholding in the first place?
True story.
Yeah, period.
True story.
Why would he do that? I mean, honestly, I'm wondering the same thing myself.
What law are you talking about?
Like the 613 laws.
Like which one though?
All of them.
Okay.
Because some people are saying when Jesus died on the cross, that's gone. But I'm like, no. Literally, the verse says he came to fulfill it, not abolish it. Which then does make you wonder, because there's a lot of ones in there that are like, you can't have tattoos. Ooh. Like things like that. But I also think we're not taking it in the same context that culturally it was at the same time. So yeah, why would God give law? This is the first time he's hearing these questions too, so we might have to think few. Law to humanity that we wouldn't be capable of upholding in the first place. So actually, I'll speak first. I don't. He's shy. He's nervous right now. I don't know why. Okay, so I was watching this podcast this morning, and I'm like, period. I didn't think about it that way, because I was thinking about this question, because I don't know the answer. But this guy was like, just this random guy on TikTok, not a preacher or nothing, gave this great word. It literally only had a couple likes. It was just this random guy, so that was meant to come to me, because he was saying God's law is not laws. When we hear the word law, we think traffic laws, those types of laws, governed by police, whatever. But really, it's more of a law of the law of gravity, a principle to life. So God, this is the principles of life, that life would be going good if we followed, kind of like gravity. If you break it, it's going to break you back. And yeah, it's not like a right and wrong necessarily. It's just
the guardrail.
Yeah, guardrail. Period. There's a lot of them, but was God's law, meant to save us, guide us, or expose something deeper?
What was the first one? What would you say the
first
question? What was God's law? What
was God's law meant to save us, guide us, or expose something deeper? All three.
Probably more so the last two, I think.
Guide and expose. Yeah, save. Interesting. This is why I have my Bible out, because I was reading in Romans, my favorite. And then, dude, this is how I know. I don't pick these topics every week. I just let God come to me. And I was kind of thinking about God's law, and then everything this week has been about God's law, so I'm like, period. I just happened to start reading in Romans. That's full of it. Hold on. And I was like, dang, we're spitting facts here. So let me just read this. I love you, Paul. This is Romans 3:19. Now we know that whatever the law says, it says to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced and the whole world be held accountable to God. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous in God's sight by the works of the law. Rather, through the law, we become conscious of our sin. I actually wrote a paper about this last semester. because my professor was asking, this is a good question, like, would we know what sin is without God's law?
No.
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 We wouldn't. And that's what I said in my paper. And 4, we maintain that a person is justified by faith apart from the works of the law. Because this is where tomorrow, I think I'm going to post this today. So, yeah, literally tomorrow, I'm meeting with a Catholic priest. And I've been reading a lot about their sacraments. And they really believe works of the law, just works in general, baptism, whatever, is saving them. You're justified through the law, but you're not saved by the law. But here's the kicker. Here's where this goes back to the abolish versus fulfill. Jesus' main squeeze, so I'm believing this guy. Do we then nullify the law by this faith? Not at all. Rather, we uphold the law. I love the book of Romans because Paul admits he's like a sinner. Like he says he's the best sinner. He's like the worst of the worst sinners, aren't we all? But he says, but kind of like out of loving somebody and saying like, oh my gosh, this guy saved me, why would you not want to do things that honor him and align with his will? Naturally then, yeah, good works come out of that, but the law and following the law in and of itself is not saving you. Speak. He's been so shy.
Oh no, because it's like that one video I sent you, that lady that was remember, she's the lady with talked about going to hell and seeing somebody famous.
Oh.
And she talks
Biggie Smalls.
right. But anyhow, she was talking about the same thing, like, do you know what Jesus went through, like all the torch, as far as the crucifixion, the horror and the graphic, brutality of the crucifixion, what he went through for humanity, which he didn't have to save people. So then really, like, that makes you, if you love him, then you're obligated to want to be obedient to him. So because when you really think about what he went through, that he gave up his deity to take on our humanity and then let his creation torture him to death to save us, well, then you want to then live your life that pleases him out of love and gratitude.
Yeah, period. Because just to think about somebody you love on earth and how you'll do stuff for them, you'll be inconvenienced all the time for people because you love them. That's not even to the level of extreme of like that person dying for you, and you still just naturally think, oh my gosh, I love this person, so like of course I'll go out of my way for this person. Of course I want to do things that please this person. Occur. And that's why we're kind of segueing into disciplining children too, because I was chatting with my gal at work, and really a lot of the times we see so much craziness in the world because people, one, don't understand the gospel and God's law, and there's so many broken families that it's hard to even like understand how to be like obedient in general, because a lot of people, I'm blessed that my parents are together, a lot of people, I think it would be hard to understand like being obedient to like a father, and God, if you didn't even have like a strong male presence in your life, period. Right? We'll get there. Ooh, how does God's law differ from human morality? Would we even understand morality if we didn't have God's law?
No. It'd just be chaos.
No, I don't think so either. And I think sometimes like,
but morality doesn't save you either, and it doesn't mean anything to God. I mean, like, he's not impressed with our morality because it's not going to get you to heaven. But sure, at the same time, even if for people who aren't believers, at least a base level morality keeps a society like civilized for the most part, because most people agree, yeah, you don't steal, you don't kill, you don't, all that, the terrible stuff. You act like a decent human being, and you can be a decent human being and still not be a believer and going to heaven, but still have morals. I mean, you can be a moralist,
True. And sometimes I think too, like I said, if you think of God's law as more of a principle, oh my goodness, a principle of the way the world functions at its best, less about like God like wanting you to follow whatever he wants you to follow, where was I going with this? Oh, that's another reason why God sent Jesus, because he understood, okay, these humans that I've created are just not going to be able to reach the standard of what would make the world function at its best. And he loves us so much that he's like, shoot, we got to figure this out because they're just not going to be able to, they're always going to miss the mark. Always. And still we're going to miss the mark. But thankfully, Jesus came to help us out there. Okay. Here's where we're going to get into the little bit of the what we're probably going to get canceled for stuff. That's why I put it at the end, because we'll probably drop off some viewers after we bored y'all about God's law. Okay. So we're going to talk about disciplining your children, because we live in this world where everybody loves gentle parenting. That's like the coined term. Was I gentle parented?
No. I mean, no. I mean, I wasn't like, I don't think it was like,
He wasn't screaming.
all right. I mean, it wasn't like, you know.
I think people, when they think the opposite of gentle parent, they think just this evil dictator, and they're like, oh.
Well, right. They always, people take it to the other extreme. I mean, you can be a gentle parent, but not
babying
still,
your children.
Right. I mean, to me, it depends what you mean by gentle parenting.
True.
I think it's the buzzword of the day, so nobody jumps on that bandwagon, and it's like, meant to be like, oh, and the problem with all that is, like, sometimes kids need obviously a firm hand and hold them accountable. And if it makes them cry or whatever, like spanking, for instance, they'll live, they'll survive.
I knew we were going to say the word spank, and people are not going to like that one. I was spanked. But here's the kicker, too. I think it's so... I always say I would spank my children. Okay, y'all are going to really cancel me. Third episode in, and I'm canceled just by saying that. But I really do think it does depend on the children. It's not like end all be all, and I think like spanking is the one way only to discipline your child. I naturally did not need to be spanked as much because I was just afraid of being in trouble, period.
What? But do you hear a lot of people nowadays, like your generation, saying that they wouldn't spank their kids? Or
yes, and be easy. Don't be saying people's names on here.
Well, no, I don't even know who you. But like you said, your coworker was talking to you about this, or
yeah, but she agrees with me.
Oh.
And yeah, I just naturally didn't, because I had a healthy fear of authority, and that's where this ties into like fearing God and his law. I just naturally had that, and that's why this makes so much sense for me, because I naturally had this fear of my parents, as somebody should. It's not a fear of like, this guy's gonna beat me to death. It's a fear of like, this is the mark, I missed it, they're gonna be disappointed in me, and correction is gonna occur. So yeah, I don't think I needed spanked all that often.
No, that's
If anything, I was sassy, so I would get like a pop in the mouth. Landon, on the other hand, he needed a little correction. A lot of correction. Do you ever meet people? I meet them all the time. I meet people in the world, even as I date, and I'm like, this bum needed spanked more. Like, this person needed some hard correction.
Well, right, because I've been in a management position in different fields, like for over 25 years, and yeah, I can tell I'm seeing more and more people that come down the pike, as it were, that were never, and it's not even about spanking or discipline style. It's about the fact that, like, nobody ever told them no. They were just allowed to do whatever they want, and you got to be your kid's best friend and all this stupid idea. Just a stupid idea. But then what happens is then they become adults, and then they go into the workforce, and then the poor supervisor usually ends up, you're going to have issues somewhere, because they're not used to being confronted. They're not used to being told no. And then that's the challenge for, and then of course in the workplace, you got another mindset of like gentle parenting, so to speak, where, you can't, and it's just ridiculous. I'm a big believer in holding people accountable. And yeah, it's not always going to make you feel good, because nobody likes to be held accountable, but it has to be done to keep things working correctly, or you're just going to have people doing whatever they want. And again, I can always tell folks who, especially in the the 20-year-olds that I see coming up, I just see a lot of like this attitude of like, how dare you tell me no, kind of an attitude.
And a lot of teachers have said that they can always tell the children who are gentle parented versus the ones who have discipline at home. And like I said, I guess let's define the parameters of gentle parent. I'm saying the parents that are like, right, okay, sweetie, you did wrong. Like, do you understand? Oh, okay, I understand. Are you upset? Like, no, sometimes you just have to be like, no, you were disobedient, and you're going to go face the consequence of it.
You don't always need to talk out the feelings. If they're just being defiant. Like, well, that's the problem. You don't. There's really nothing to talk about sometimes. It's like that's just human nature. Nobody teaches a kid or a human being, whoever you nobody had to teach me how to lie or to just any sin you commit. Nobody sat me down and like, oh, do this, or it's just something that naturally comes. So that's your role as a parent, is to like correct that so that hopefully when they grow up, they'll follow God's law and just be a good person. But if you just let your kids kind of do whatever because you're more concerned about being their friend, then
Or
I
not
mean,
hurting their
yeah,
feelings.
I mean, good luck.
Yeah, period. And a lot of this really does happen. I feel like 0 to like 3, 4, so much correction. You could save a lot of hurt and like craziness and feelings and disobedience by correcting it way, way on. Slash, not even correcting it, but just like setting the standard and like showing you're the boss really early on. And it's not, like I said, it's not even about spanking, although I'm for that. If you just like show you are the authoritative figure in their life, that's really the biggest thing. But people don't want to talk about that. People don't want to talk about that. I'm honestly curious because it's such like a thing right now. I'm so curious where the world is going to be like in 40 years. Like what these kids are going to be like. You know, we haven't really seen the full like play out of gentle parenting in the world. I mean, we're starting to see it because yeah, it is like the 20-year-olds and stuff that are like kind of coming up that it's different.
I mean, it's not all of them, but like I said, and you can't blame it all on that. But you can see, and part of it is like I don't know, because as I get older, your viewpoints change. But I know all those years I was in finance, I used to had a lot of clientele that were teachers and stuff. And the one question I always asked them, because I was always curious, like especially the teachers who'd been teaching for like over 20 years, I'd say, so what do you think has changed? Or we just have been having small talk, when we were doing whatever loan or whatever. I was like, what do you think? And they all said that without fail, they all said the same thing. It's gotten worse. Being a teacher's gotten worse because of the behavior of the kids. And I always thought that was interesting that I could ask several different teachers, different schools, different grade levels, and they always said the same thing, that it's getting worse. Well, I think there's a reason for it because, like I said, we live in a society like this, very like anti-ruled for some reason, and
Not for some reason. It makes
well,
sense.
yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I understand why it's happening, but yeah, it's not going to bode well for the future.
No, it's very much the parent. If I would have come home and I got in trouble, let's say a teacher sent the note home, you know what my mother would have said? He would have been at work. My mother would have been like, "What did you do?" And I would have like been questioned immediately. Versus now, I see so many people, if their kid comes home with a letter, it's like, "Oh, let me go talk to the teacher because this
Well, yeah,
precious
they're
baby didn't do
right,
anything."
right. They're right away, and most teachers would back that up. I think that educators would say the same thing. Like when I was growing up, like yeah, if you got in trouble at school, my parents just like assume, because they like like, okay, so what happened? What did you do? And like, they kind of took the, now it's like the most parents, unfortunately, will just assume, oh, you're picking on my kid. There's a conspiracy against my kid, and they're going to fly up to that school. And again, that's another thing I hear so many teachers saying, like just battling parents all the time, which I'm not saying it never happens where there isn't a teacher who's just a who goes rogue and just is unfair to somebody's kid. But I think usually the kid usually deserves the punishment or whatever they're getting, but yet the parents are so reflexively defensive of, how dare you do this to my kid. And then plus what you just showcase to your kid, look, every time you get in trouble, mommy's going to come or daddy's going to come fix it for me, because you're there just to like be their lawyer, so to speak, and not like actually try to fit and like work with the teacher. Like, okay, you did something wrong, you need to be punished, not just defended regardless of what your behavior was.
And that's why we are seeing this like resurgence in like 20-year-olds, young 30-year-olds, some too, where they're at work and they're always the victim. Like, my boss is always out to get me. It's like, because they've just never had somebody constructively correct them. And that's why it's really sad to me because, like I said, the way you address authority tells, like on earth, tells me how you perceive authority with God.
Well, yeah, if you can't, I've always thought, if you can't like, if I can't be obedient to my boss or just another, or just be held accountable by somebody's an authority over me, then there's no way you can do that to God, because the stuff God asks us to do is way harder than anything a boss has ever asked me to do. When God asks you to forgive somebody that's been totally crappy to you, never been nice to you, all those kind of things, and like, or really, and then in some cases, there are people that have like had like crimes committed against them. God says you have to forgive that person. Like, so I always look at it that way. Like, well, if I can't like follow these rules at work, how am I going to follow, you know, what God wants me to do? So to me, yeah, it does go hand in hand. If you're just going to be, a stiff necked person that, nobody's going to tell me what to do, well, I guarantee that's going to spill over into your belief system when it comes to being obedient to God.
Period. And that's why I think parents are doing a disservice to their children because, yeah, they're not like conditioning them to think that way. It's just whatever, whatever. Well, it's not whatever, whatever with God. Like, justice is coming.
Mhm.
And if you can't even listen to your parents, it's
Well,
sad.
it's yeah, the same people. I not again making a broad stroke, painting in
Generalization.
broad strokes here, but somebody who's going to be like, the whole like, don't want to hold their kids accountable. I get there's probably when it comes to their so-called spiritual walk, they're going to be, well, they'll say things like, my God wants me to be happy. Well, no, God wants you to be holy. He's not concerned about your happiness, your holiness. And yeah, that means you have to be disciplined. God disciplines those he loves. Period. So
Discipline equals freedom. Amen. Ultimate freedom. That's why even when, like, around my friends' kids and stuff too, I never try to use words like, you are naughty. This is like, like, all my friends' kids are young. Like, oh, that's naughty to do that. I even am, like, very intentional with the words I say to them because I want them to think of the way of, like, this is being disobedient. Like, God, this is a disobedient act. They're little, so they're not fully understanding it, but they're hearing the words of, like, oh, wow, you were very obedient, or this was very disobedient. Because I think even like the simple little things, it's not all about spanking and correction like that. It's intentional, like
but like going back to the
leading them.
spanking thing, I grew up in a time, I'm 55, and I grew up in a time like in the neighborhood I grew up in, I was spanked by my neighbors. Like if I was down at a friend's house and I did something wrong, that I remember like the one neighbor, he's gone now, but he'd grab you, I mean scoop you up, and I mean whack you, but good I mean, can you imagine? That's like unimaginable today. I
Mm.
mean, the parents would have the cops called, but that's the way it was, because everybody, we all knew our neighbors, everybody trusted their judgment. And if I was at the, and when we're at somebody else's house, like the rule is like, hey, if my kid acts up to this other, parent, feel free to spank them. I mean, that just sounds crazy to people nowadays, because, but yet the community functions so much better. But I grew up in a time in a place where it was, everybody was there's all these intact families. It was just, yeah, I'm not saying it was like perfect or anything like that, but it was just a much more, I don't know what the word, just a much more stable
Stable.
environment, for people to grow up in. And again, if you did wrong at the neighbor's house, they would whoop you. And they'd say something to my dad. And my dad's like, okay, good. I mean, because, and yeah, I can think one time I was, I was probably, I don't know, 10 years, I was throwing sand at people, like a bunch of kids playing. I threw sand in somebody's
Oh,
face. Well, out of nowhere, I didn't know that the dad was watching. He comes out there, like stomping out there, grabs me. I mean, spanking my butt and sent me home. Well, guess what?
guess who never threw sand in
Right,
somebody's
right.
face again?
I deserved it, and my dad would be like, "Yeah, you got what you deserved." Because, but again, like would be completely unimaginable by today's standards, because people would be like, they'd
Who
sue
did
them,
this
they'd get
like
the
every
cops involved,
time?
whatever. Like, where, yeah, I mean, I was old school. Like, you did something wrong, but guess what? The kids all acted like
Better.
civilized human beings when you're at somebody's house. There wasn't, all this, yelling at each other and fighting and other sort of thing. So,
And talking back to
right.
adults, like there was a respect for
Right.
an
Oh yeah. I
authority.
mean, I was taught to. Yeah, you respected adults. You didn't argue with an adult on anything. If they told you to do something, then you did it.
And I just think of it this way, y'all. That little pop on the butt, like a to the mouth. Ultimately, that correction is like this compared to God's correction when you get to heaven. It's better to have that and like get your kid in line, get your whatever, a human in line. Any like natural consequence on earth is nothing compared to God's judgment. So it's better to get it
Yeah,
figured
and
out here
yeah.
because there ain't no
Yeah,
figuring it
if you
out once
care
you're up
about your
there.
kids, you're going to discipline them. If you
Yeah.
don't care about your kids, you're not going to discipline them. You're going to be their friend and let
Hmm.
them do what they want. And then, unfortunately, they're going to suffer for it down the road when they're making bad decisions because
You can't like put up boundaries at 16 when
too
you were
late. Yeah.
boundaryless their entire life. I know, even like that was the rule when I was growing up. Like all the parents that I would like go to their house if they were watching me, they all had the same values as well. Or they were allowed to spank me if I was bad. But guess who never got spanked? Because I just knew, like, they are for real, and I do not want to get spanked. First off, I'd get spanked if I was gonna get spanked. I would have probably gotten spanked by those parents, and then I would have gotten in more trouble
Right.
when I got home. So I just knew naturally. Okay, I'm in this person's house. I'm listening to this other adult. I respect them. Call them Mr. and Mrs. And I was fine. But yeah, a lot of people I'd tell about that think that's absolutely nuts. Even if I had like my grandparents on here, they were spanking like getting spanked at school. That
Yeah.
would be like
Yeah.
bonkers
Yes.
nowadays if the
Yeah.
teacher did
I
that.
remember kids when I was in elementary school, when I was growing up, yeah, you would get the wooden board. I still remember. And it was like, in gym class, this kid named Arlie was acting up. And anyhow, long story short,
Marley.
the gym teacher had him, he grabbed these bars. There's like a went down to the locker room. What do you think of what do you call it? The handrail,
Literally.
and just in front of the whole class,
Oh,
whacked him with the secretary, the principal secretary came in with the board. He had to sign something, the gym teacher, and then he administered corporal punishment. And guess what? Arlie didn't act up anymore.
and Arlie, where are you at, Arlie? I
Right.
hope you're
I don't
watching.
know.
Come
Well,
on, come
but
on
at
the
any
podcast.
rate, right. I mean, but like again, nowadays people would just think that's. But of course I see all the things going on in school, which I'm like, yeah. And then we wonder why. I don't know. Yeah.
Here's the kicker. This is gonna be the title of the podcast. Spare the rod, spoil the child. And I've heard so many people say a shepherd, because you're talking about a shepherd in this case, a shepherd doesn't beat his sheep. He guides them with his rod. I'm pretty sure a shepherd, if a sheep's acting a little rogue, would give
Well,
it a
yeah,
little
that's what the
pop.
rod's for. And I'm not. Nobody's talking about beating.
Yeah.
There's a different. You're spanking. You're not hitting. Yeah, it's not. You're not doing it out of anger, and you're not.
Yeah, that's a very important part.
Yeah,
Actually, when I talked to my
yeah.
coworker,
If
she
you're,
said, as a
yeah,
parent, that's the most important part is like you are going to be hot sometimes when your kid is disobedient over and over and over, and it's very important as the parent to like make sure it's not out of anger.
right.
Just correction. Yeah, you're not
Right.
leaving like bruises on these
Yeah, I mean,
kids.
you don't want to be yelling and screaming, and it's like this. Yeah, you need to like do it in a calm, like administer in a calm way, and
And
then
a lot of the
and
times
then
it's just a
afterwards
swift
explain why.
moment.
Right, and then explain to them why it happened and what that's the consequence of your behavior.
If anything, it usually just shocks the kid more than like it doesn't hurt. The amount of times Landon would be walking by, mouthing being bad, not doing what he's supposed to, pop on the butt with a slipper. It would just catch him off guard of like, whoop, I knew I shouldn't have done that. And then an explanation, probably some tears, but it's tears out of like shock of like, oh, I know I did bad. Whoops, continue on. And hopefully not do it again. Landon he needed to be reminded a few times of what not to do.
Yeah, kids need. I can think of another example when, because again, like we went to a big church and so we had a lot of people. We'd be at different people's houses, and I was thinking of this one kid who was like just a notorious brat. He was a spoiled brat, and my dad just whooped on him once, And but here's the thing: that kid wasn't afraid of my dad. That kid was my dad's buddy then. Like was just like walking, like just kind of like hanging on him the rest of the night, like it totally. It's funny how it just totally changed that kid's attitude. He's being like a defiant brat. He got spanked, and then after that, he was being like so much better. Not like in a like, oh, I'm scared, but like I think deep down kids know they need that. I really do.
Yes. Yeah, that is a good point that you brought up that I wouldn't have even thought of. I think a lot of the times people think they are doing a service to their child by being their friend and think that's how they're going to get them to listen is like meeting them where they're at. No, humans in general want like to have authority above them and to like have to listen. That's why it's like a beautiful example of like a father and mother and a kid is an example of how we are with God ultimately. And we deep down desire that to like follow somebody. So yeah, so many times you do see like the bratty kids in school that get in trouble by the teacher, but they love the teacher because they love direction, and maybe at home they get none of that. Because they know it's like an act of like, I want what's best for you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, deep down that kid, even though they're a kid and immature and still developing, they know that adult the one that like is doing it for a reason, they can tell who. I mean, because when the parent is just absent or distracted or just does lets them do whatever they want, well, then that kid quickly learns that okay, they don't care how I act, whether I'm good or bad, they don't care. So
Clock, clock, clock. So there you have it, y'all. I wonder how long we've been chatting. Ultimately, yeah, God's law is not abolished, period. It's fulfilled. Thank you, Jesus, for that. And out of God's ultimate sacrifice, I naturally want to obey God because I would be literally on the road straight to hell if Jesus did not die for my sins. And so, yeah, naturally out of that, I want to obey this person because it's like, you did this crazy thing for me. What can I do for you? Nothing will ever amount, but what can I do for you? And so that means, yeah, good works come out of it. I naturally align with God's law, but the law is not saving me, and my good works are not saving me. Only Jesus on the cross is why I'm good. And yeah, people, discipline your kids. I'm sorry. Do it because you love them, and we want a good functioning society. And unfortunately, it's getting a little crazy. So please discipline your children. And please obey God. How about that?
true story.
Okay. Thanks. What do you think?
What?
Are you nervous or are you settled?
I'm settled
He's
now.
settled. He's like, oh, the six
I've
people
had a cold
that...
this the last couple days too.
He's like,
so.
the 6 people that watch you. Okay, rebuke. The 6 people that watch you. I'm like, baby, I got like 147 people that are watching me. So thank you. Episode 3 of the Kingdom Collective and my first guest, Lance Nofziger, complete. Woo, 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 woo.